All right. So we're at a minute after, so why don't we just go ahead and get started? I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So, hello everyone. I'm Jenny Gaines. I'm Vice President of Membership here at SOCMA, and I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar. But before we get into that part of it, I would be very remiss if I didn't introduce our brand new President and CEO, Jen Klein, who's just finishing up her second day here. And so we're so excited to have her here as part of our SOCMA team. And so I want to turn it over to Jen to introduce herself for a minute, and then we'll get going.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny. I know I've met some of you in the past. Looking forward to meeting more of you at the show, but I'm thrilled to be here and be at SOCMA. As she mentioned, especially since yesterday was my first day. I'm no stranger to SOCMA, though. I've attended the SOCMA show for many years. So I know personally how valuable it can be, and I'm super excited to be a part of it from the inside. I'm so glad we're doing this webinar. It is designed to help you maximize your experience as an exhibitor. What I really want to say to you, and what you know and you'll see throughout the process, is we're here to support you every step of the way and make sure that this year's SOCMA show delivers real value for you. And that's all I've got to say. And I'm just excited to be on board and get down to business.
Thank you, Jen. And like I said, again, welcome and so glad to have you here. So today, one reason that we're having this webinar is I think it was last year after the show, Lloyd, was talking with someone on our team, and we were talking about, after coming to the show, it really made him stop and think a bit about who was, who should he bring to the team, a little bit more on how he should plan for the team, for the show, and when working with his team. So what we did is we reached out to Lloyd and a few of our colleagues who I want to introduce here to really bring their perspective, because they're all bringing something that's very unique. For example, Lloyd is president of Hanford Research. And of course, he's going to be moderating and walking us through today. But Brooke DiDomenico, who's also a member of our SOCMA board, she's Chief Technical Officer at Nation Ford Chemical. Christian Hogue, he's Director of Strategic Marketing at Ascent Chemicals, who's, President and CEO, is also on our Board of Governors. And then Jim Stockhausen, he's Director of Business Development for Future Fuel. So each of them, as they answer the questions today, are really going to bring a different perspective. So no matter what role you are, there's going to be some insight and learnings for you based on some of the things and the knowledge that they're bringing. And one thing I can say too is they're all longtime attendees, of the SOCMA show and have a lot of expertise to share. So Lloyd, I'm going to turn the floor over to you to get started.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I just want to mirror what Jenny said. We're excited to have you here, Jen, and welcome. I know you're only almost 2 days in, but we're excited to have you. All right, so let's jump on in. I want to start my first question on sort of strategy around preparing for the show. We all have different companies, different sizes, different goals. What's your approach to setting your goals for the show, and who do you typically include in that discussion at your company?
We typically start planning 2 or 3 months in advance, and this show really provides a good opportunity to schedule and update discussions with current customers that we're having project discussions with or already producing for, and looking to have conversations about that, but also connect with target customers. And our planning team, we typically include R&D, process engineering, as well as our commercial folks.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, one thing we do at Nation Ford Chemical that may be a little different than the approach some other companies take is we like to use these shows as one kind of a development opportunity for some of our employees, and also sometimes as a reward. And so we will typically bring one person with us, either somebody who we see has a bright future and we'd like them to see a different side of the business. Typically it's an engineer or a process manager or an operator or somebody that would never normally see, the back end business side of the operation. or else we use it as an opportunity for somebody who's really gone above and beyond over the last year. And we just want to give them the opportunity to get outside the plant for a while and come, you obviously are working at the shows, but also come and have a little bit of fun and get to know us on, a level outside of the work environment. So we use it not only to, try and network and make future business opportunities, but also to reward our employees.
Excellent. Thank you. Christian, anything that you want to add on that?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is we also include sourcing in our pre-show planning, right? So again, one of the many things that makes SOCMA so unique is the diverse group of companies it attracts. And so, we've found, right, like Dukla, our director of strategic sourcing, is typically present at SOCMA with one or two team members. And, albeit he's not, selling our capabilities, right, but certainly, connecting with key strategic suppliers. And, the timing of SOCMA, right, falling in the spring is good as we think about, annual contract renewals and things of that nature.
Awesome. And from our perspective, the SOCMA show has really been sort of a nexus for a lot of our suppliers. And so this year we're bringing our procurement specialist along with us. So very exciting. The next question I have is, more along the lines of which members are going to bring the most value to the show or back from it. What is each of your team's approach to determining, okay, what are we bringing versus what are we taking back with us? And Jim, I'll start with you on that one.
Sure. Well, as far as bringing to it, I think including our R&D chemists and our process engineers at the show helps us live at the show discuss any new opportunities that come up, and companies that are looking for outsourcing manufacturing, we can go into full discussion, or at least to the point where an NDA would kind of stop the conversation and identify, is there a fit with our capabilities, and have that feasibility discussion live there at the show. And so having them there, I think, is critical, and they bring a lot to the party as far as taking back from the show. The fact that suppliers and equipment suppliers are represented as well helps our process engineering group stay current on what new is available in the industry and work the show that way. A lot of times we keep them busy enough to where they don't have a big opportunity to walk the floor, but we try to at least provide for that opportunity if we can.
Excellent. All right, so now I want to move ahead in time a little bit. Now you're sort of directly pre-show. I know when that time starts to come, I start to get more either one-on-one invites or blanket emails saying, hey, we should meet up, or connections through LinkedIn. How do you decide what your company does? What strategies have worked best on the pre-show approach? But I think equally as important is, what did you try that didn't work, and why do you think that was?
Jump in on this one. So Jim made a really good point, right? Pre-show prep starts, 90 days out from the conference, right? At Ascent, actual outreach, right, setting meetings typically starts about 60 days out from the conference, in multi-factored upside, right? One of which being that, people's schedules have a tendency of filling up fast, right? So if you want, discretion to lock in meetings with who you'd like, you do need to start early. When it comes to how we structure the outreach, so unfortunately, right, there's only so much private meeting room space available. There's only so many, sidebars and individuals will have at the show, right? So there is a constraint to what you can cover. And so we kind of stack it in terms of priority. So when, Jenny and team puts out that list of attendees, first and foremost, right, we're trying to understand, which of our current customers, right, are going to be, we want to make sure that we prioritize those, we carve out the appropriate amount of time. Again, sometimes that's meeting on the show floor, sometimes it's a dinner or a breakfast or what have you. And then, are there companies where we're actively working on a project? Maybe it's not over the finish line just yet, but again, prioritizing those companies we've not yet met with, but that kind of fall into that ideal customer profile. And then, last but not least, are there other channel partners, right? Distributors, equipment manufacturers, et cetera, that we want to kind of pack our schedule with. I think where I've gone wrong in the past is mistaking quantity for quality. right? So, I know a lot of people, right? They'll be like, oh, we got to get 60 meetings. And, sometimes that works, right? But I think that, I'd rather have 35, 40 really high value meetings as opposed to just like 60 meetings and everybody looks really busy. So that's how we approach it.
So thank you, Christian.
I think I find this aspect of the show to be the most overwhelming. And I see the list come out from SOCMA of attendees, and it's, however many hundreds of attendees. And it's like, where do you even begin? And especially for small companies that don't have dedicated staff to be looking at all this. We're a company of engineers. It's like, I feel like I'm going one by one, looking at every person, looking them up on LinkedIn. What's their role? Are they, somebody we really want to meet with? And I'm a bit excited about this webinar to learn from other companies, because I don't think it's something we've really nailed down and figured out the right approach to. Every year we're doing it a little bit differently and seeing what works.
Yeah, we haven't done a whole lot of mass emails or proactive activities ahead of time, and maybe we should consider that. But we tend to be more selective when the list comes out. As Christian mentioned, 60 days out, we're looking to lock down meetings with people that we know typically attend and make sure that we're on the calendar for those key meetings. But when the attendee list comes out, then we're prioritizing, as Brooke mentioned, and doing the best we can. But we're certainly open to looking at different things to do, because I think there are some things that maybe we miss in the approach that we've had up to this point.
And Jenny, I don't know if we can do this, but maybe if there's people on the call that have, great things that have worked for them, can they just put it in the chat?
Absolutely. That was one thing that I did fail. Thank you, Brooke. At the beginning, we do have a Q&A. So if you've got ideas or questions that you want us to answer to along the way or at the end, please feel free to put them in the chat, because we definitely, as Brooke said, we want to hear from you guys too, because I'm sure there's others on the call that have some really great ideas to share as well.
So, one of the things that I heard from this group here was, you're trying to schedule these early because meeting spaces will fill up fast and you only have so much space at the booth. How do you utilize the space, not just your booth, but do you utilize the SOCMA lounge, other areas within the hotel? What do you use to make sure you're getting the most out of those meetings?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. We do not get a private meeting room. And what I find typically happens is prearranged meetings with existing customers or potential customers that have reached out to us. Sometimes we'll have a set meeting spot, but typically what we find is that we just have people meet us at the booth and then we wander around and look for an open table somewhere, which is probably not the most efficient way to do it. But then there's also a lot of conversations that are just kind of ad hoc of, say, we're a tool manufacturer, say somebody in a lab that's looking for a potential tool or something, they happen right at the booth. But yeah, there's a lot of just wandering and finding open spots. And we do utilize the SOCMA lounge, and they have some meeting rooms, or we just look for, a couple chairs in the hallway, or go downstairs and grab a coffee, or just kind of, each one's a little different on what's available and what can we find.
It's funny you say that, Brooke. I feel like in many times I've used 15 of my 30-minute meeting looking for a place to have the actual meeting, right? So Jenny, just throwing it out there, maybe some more tables and chairs. The space accommodates, could be interesting. But I also am a big advocate of private meeting rooms, right? It's awesome that SOCMA makes those available to us. And some years we've had more than one, right? Which is great. But it's also great because, it's just not as noisy. It's a little less congested. It's going to be available when it's supposed to be available. But I don't mean to give anybody pro tips, but I have seen in the past, not SOCMA, but other trade shows, you'll see like companies come in really early and they'll like get a table in the lounge and they're like, this is our table. This is the
Yeah. I would say, we do our best to make sure we're not double booking, but we know, people will walk up and want to have conversations. And I'd say at the SOCMA show, we definitely utilize the lounge, pretty normally when we were also double booked at the booth. But I've also heard from some people say, hey, let's meet down in the lobby or at the bar or wherever they can find a space. Jim, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, consider this our biggest show of the year, and it's important that if we're balancing an extra attendee versus having both a private room and so forth, we might err on the case on the side of extra attendees, because I think this is so important for us to have the right folks there. But that's where the SOCMA Lounge and the private or the open tables really comes into play with a little pre-planning. And if you're stealth enough to send somebody to reserve it, find a spot 15 minutes ahead of time or a while ahead of time before an important meeting, you can usually find a spot. But you have to be nimble.
You had mentioned balance, which brings me to my next question. When you've got all of these meetings and you've got the show that you actually want to walk around and attend, you still have to maintain a presence at the booth. So how do you balance the skills that you keep at the booth versus sending people around to the show or going to the showcases?
Yeah, we typically, it's kind of unspoken going in, but we usually have 3 or 4 people, and one person's job is just going to be to man the booth, and the other people will take the meetings. And what I've found is you really need to find the right person that can speak, that understands what you do, um, and can speak to what you do, because we have had in the past where, as I mentioned earlier, we bring people kind of as a reward and a thank you for going above and beyond, but they may not have the knowledge. If somebody comes up and says, do you do X type of chemistry or Y type of process, they may not know that. And one of the things we've learned from is some of those people will then default to, no, we don't do this, and potentially turn away business, instead of being either, yes, maybe it's something we could do, or let me take your information and get somebody. So what I would say is somebody that can speak intelligently to what you do, and somebody that has a very optimistic, positive attitude at the booth.
Brooke, that's a really good call out. A lot of times I'll see, there's like a lot of horsepower at SOCMA, right? No offense or buts. But when you walk the show floor, right, sometimes you do notice it's more junior folks, which I think is really good. It creates a great opportunity for them. But at the same token, right, maybe they aren't, at the drop of a pen prepared to, answer a tough question, right? That, could be the difference between, discovering a new project or not. We try and make a point, and I think it's not necessarily intentional. It's just kind of a result of how the schedule gets built, but everybody has booth time at Ascent, right? In fact, you will even see Brian, our CEO, at the booth. And again, it's intentional, right? I think it's really important that it's not just entry-level folks, right? But everybody gets a chance to, kind of interact with the walk-ups, because sometimes those are the most exciting conversations.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real juggling act because of all the activities that are available to you and the opportunities that are available. And so we make sure that we keep a common spreadsheet with a daily calendar and have the meetings that we scheduled ahead of time kind of spaced out. As you mentioned, having somebody always in the booth, and everybody has a turn in the booth, and so forth, as well as their private meetings that they've scheduled. So we do the best we can to have to cover as much as possible. But that, I think, is a successful show is when it is a juggling act, because we're taking advantage of all that the show provides to us.
Yeah, and to add on to that, we try and utilize it periodically when we have new talent to sort of test them out, see how they do in a public setting or thinking on their feet. Usually myself and or our director of sales and marketing, Romans Lee, will be in the booth pretty much all the time, and then we'll have a more technical minded individual there. And that's how we learned, we have 2 R&D resources. We brought them both one year. One of them we learned very, very knowledgeable about the chemistries, can answer any question. Don't put them on the spot. Don't leave them at the booth. And we had another one who's really surprised us for being very nimble on his feet and being able to get to, yeah, let's talk about that, as opposed to just going, no, we don't do that chemistry. So it is a little bit of a balancing act. So moving on to the SOCMA show specifically, because most of you, like myself, attend multiple shows over the course of the year, whether the SOCMA show is your big show or not. What would you say has been unique about the SOCMA show that attendees and or exhibitors might not experience at some other shows?
I'll take that one first. I think that the format of this show is really unique in that SOCMA does an excellent job of focusing on providing a forum for companies that are looking to outsource manufacturing or development of chemicals, and enabling them to find companies who have capabilities that fit their needs, right? And that's really what they're about. And they provide that the communications ahead of time, the lead sheets that they provide, everything that they do is really focused on that. I've been a member of trade organizations and been going to trade shows for 40 plus years, and I've never seen an organization that is so dedicated and focused on just that, is peeling the onion and just getting to providing that forum for people to have those discussions that matter. And so with a little preparation ahead of time, you can really maximize the results of your participation, because you've got those resources available.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think additive to Jim's comments. So I feel like SOCMA promotes connectivity, right? Like from day one. I mean, Exhibit A is the fact that you actually give us a attendee list, right? Which is, I've seen some comments in the chat about when does that come out and whatnot, right? Good question. But a lot of trade shows don't, right? Especially if you're participating in a trade show for the very first time, maybe you get an understanding of the exhibitors, right? But you really don't understand like who the conference attracts and for what reason. So I love the fact that, leading up to the show, but also during the show, right? There's a lot of connections that happen. And I think partly, Jenny, that's stimulated by just the amount of like floor hours that you have open. I feel like a trend I've seen as of late is you'll have like a 3-day conference, but the exhibiting floor is only open for, 2 hours a day in between, or just before, just after lunch. So anyways, that's great. I think SOCMA attracts a really diverse group of companies, right? They're not all in water treatment or coatings or pulp and paper, right? But again, really anyone looking for third party manufacturing services.
And I'll say, for those that don't know, I'm also on the trade show committee, but from a planning standpoint, that is very intentional. And we purposely try and minimize the amount of time where either the company showcases or some of the general sessions that we have, we really try and minimize the overlap between those and the floor time to make sure we're not drawing away from business being done on the floor, because that's ultimately why the majority of people are there.
Right.
Yeah. And to build on that, we either attend or exhibit at numerous shows throughout the year. And the ones we exhibit at that really focus on these showcases or papers, you can be standing at the booth for 2 hours with nobody walking through. And that is just not something that, we have to worry about at the SOCMA show. We're actually pretty busy from beginning of the day to end of day. But another thing that we have found unique is typically when we're attending a show, it focuses on a specific chemistry or a specific industry like UV curables or agrochemicals. SOCMA is one of the few shows that we attend that has such a breadth that allows us to make contact across numerous different chemistries. And we found that very valuable for us. So, all right, thank you for that. So we get through the show, we pack up our trade show booths, we go home. Now the work is done. We found that post-show follow-up is a critical success factor for getting real value out of the show. People will have really great conversations on the floor. We're saying, yes, we absolutely have to do this, but you do have to follow up. What does that process look like for your companies, and how has it helped you capitalize on future opportunities?
Yeah, we find the exact same thing. I would say the first several years I was going to trade shows, I got all these business cards and I put them in a stack and I didn't take good notes and I just assumed somebody's going to follow up with me after the show. And then you don't hear anything. And then you have this stack and you don't even remember who you talked to. And I'll say we still do this a very old school way, but it works. But every meeting that we have, especially kind of walk-ups at the booth, unplanned meetings, we are taking notes on those business cards and following up that night or the next night with an email so that we at least have all of our thoughts down on paper. We remember who people are. We've made the first outreach. And then the weeks following the show, we can send another follow-up. But we are doing things immediately before you can forget who you talked to, what the project was, and all the details.
Yeah, one of the things that we try to keep in mind is just because you had a really great conversation with somebody, they're having that same or similar conversation with 24 other people throughout the show. And so it's really key to make sure that you're setting the example that we're responsive, we're interested, and we're not going to wait. So Jim or Christian, anything else you wanted to add on that?
That's a good practice that Brooke described, and we're I think not quite as proactive as that as far as following up in a day or two. We should be, but we're just so exhausted. It's tough. But certainly we schedule a meeting on purpose that Monday after the show to kind of compile all our notes, and then by the end of that day, we've reached out to everybody that we connected with, and then schedule from there the priorities of additional follow-up after.
Yeah, that's a good idea too, to have a group meeting following up right after.
Yeah, I don't think our team likes it so much, but we have a meeting at the end of every day, right? Which is tough to get people like in between the end of show and dinner to carve out that hour, right? But I think as a group kind of going around talking about the meetings you've had that day, sharing notes, right? It helps just kind of, Brooke, to your point, group memory is better than any single individual's memory.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's some functionality within the actual SOCMA app, right? So you think about scanning badges, there are ways you can append notes to people's records. I'd be lying to you if I said I had used this before, but I know it exists. The other thing we found really helpful, so you'll see the Ascent folks walking around with these big booklets at the show, right? And as creepy as this may sound, every single page of that booklet is a meeting we have, and it's got, the picture of the person we're meeting with and where they went to school and their career history, details on their company. And it's just a really good way of making sure as you're taking notes, right? They're like really organized, there's space for doing so. And then after the fact, right, it kind of helps, again, just with some of the organization. But Brooke, what you mentioned is so true. You're at SOCMA, everything's exciting, everyone's saying yes. And then 2 weeks go by and it's like, did I meet with anybody? You really have to make sure you actually like pay attention and take notes and follow up. Yeah. Great point.
Yeah. So that leads me to a different question that I want to ask this group. The first couple of years, I'd say really the first year that we attended, we were so excited. We came back, we did our post-show follow-up, and then we kind of lost a little emotional steam on this because it took a while before we started hearing back from people. But when we did start to hear back from people, it started to come in quick. So my question to you is, typically for those who may not be experienced with the SOCMA show or any shows, what's a reasonable amount of time before you start to expect to hear back from people returning from the show? Because it's not usually a day or a week.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I find it all over the map. And I think some of it too is what phase of the project the people you're meeting with are in. So you might be meeting with people that are already manufacturing something today and they're looking for a second supplier, or they're looking to move the production or something. And they may follow up pretty urgently, and that's why they were at the show, because they had an immediate demand. Or you may be meeting with, a startup company that's still coming up with ideas and just trying to understand what the business is and what a tool manufacturer is. And so I just feel like it could be, immediately the next week, or it could be, 9 months down the road, or I'll get some 2 years later that say, oh, I met you at the SOCMA show. It wasn't the SOCMA show then, but I met you at the show, 2 years ago. I don't know if you remember me. And I'm thinking, I don't. But yeah, I find it all over the map.
We try to follow up with everybody within a week, but I think that there are some that require immediate follow-up, and when the conversation develops to the point where there's something that's urgent, that, and follow up accordingly. But certainly, I think keeping it fresh and at least putting it on, having them on a list of folks to circle back with. If it's just a contact, they want to know what your capabilities are and they may have something in the future, you always want to circle back with them within 30, 60 days to see, just make sure that they kind of remember you. Even that second touch point helps them remember and refresh when there is an opportunity.
That's a really good point, Jim. It's sort of the repetitive follow-up, just because one of the things that we found is they're excited. They've got to move on this during the show, even maybe a week or a month after the show. They're still like, yes, we've got to move. We get an NDA in place. We have technical conversations, and then at some point in the process, it slows or it stalls, and you got to follow up. You got to make sure you're not letting it go, because if it goes, odds are they're not going to come back. Christian, was there anything you wanted to add?
The only thing that we tried last year, and we've done this at a couple different trade shows, is who says follow-up has to wait till the next week. And I'm not talking, like, I think a really good practice is like, okay, great, we're going to get back. Monday's going to be crazy. Tuesday, 3 p.m. Can I send you a calendar invite? Like, sure, that's great. But also, right, could you just answer the question? Could you exchange the tech packet? Could you get the NDA through legal within the constraints of the show? So last year, SOCMA, we went from effectively customer introduction, commercial discussion, and we were prepared, right, having agreed upon a price to which we would transact this molecule, right, to send samples all within the time of the show. Right. So I think in some cases, Brooke, maybe take advantage of the show excitement, and if you can connect with that person on your team that, gives the project the go or the no, and then circle up with those people while you're still face to face. I think there's a lot of value in doing so, again, assuming schedules mesh and all that.
Yeah. I know we're not at the Q&A section, but while we're in this discussion, one of the questions that came up was, what sort of programs or lists or anything, what do you use? For outreach, are you using Outlook? Do you have a CRM? What are the sort of tools that are available that people can use for that?
I don't know who that was directed towards. But in general, I think Jim mentioned like email blast. I'm not a big fan of email blasts for a number of reasons. The primary one is that typically, right, you have to write it so generically that it doesn't really resonate with any one individual, right? So I think, personalized outreach is really valuable. And then there's so many different ways you can organize that. If you have a CRM system, yes, incredibly beneficial. But if you don't, Excel works really good too, right? I think what's more important is like, did we do what we say we were going to do? Did we do the outreach? I think you would be amazed at, if you reach out to 10 companies in advance of SOCMA, how many secured meetings you would have going into the show, right? I think in general, people are pretty open and interested in connecting with industry peers this week. So, we try and take full advantage of that.
I think that's a good point, Christian. I don't think it's as important what the actual tools that you're using are as far as, CRM or Excel spreadsheet or how you do it. But I think the blocking and tackling is what's really important, is making sure that you do keep that connection and follow up.
Yeah, we found at the show last year, our director of sales and marketing, he sent individual emails out to a number of people. And that really resonated with some people, to the point where they came to the booth and said, oh, you're the guy I was talking with. So yeah, the email blasts, I think, have their place, but it resonates much better if you're having sort of these one-on-one conversations. So my next question is, Jenny and her team do a great job trying to get people to the show and let people know we're here. So there's probably a number of people that this is the first time they're either attending or exhibiting at the SOCMA show. What are some additional recommendations that you would have for those individuals or organizations that we haven't covered yet?
Wear comfortable shoes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many opportunities, and it's, it keeps you busy. And a lot of times that means you're in a booth or you're walking around the show, and you get your 10,000 steps in, I think.
Yeah. And I would say if you're exhibiting, I think you need at least 3 people. And that's just me, and you guys can chime in too. I think you're going to have at least one person hopefully tied up in meetings a lot of the time, sometimes 2, and then that leaves you one person hanging at the booth. It allows people to, walk the floor a little bit, take breaks. But I think sometimes people will get a booth and bring one person or sometimes two, and that stretches that person really thin or leaves your booth unattended a lot.
Yeah, I think, some of the things that we've learned are you need to really have two people at the booth. If you've got one person talking and then you've got another person waiting to be spoken to, odds are they're just going to walk off and potentially not even come back. Um, you've got to be prepared for a long day of standing for sure. It's valuable. It's a lot of fun, but it can also be very exhausting. And we always leave feeling like this was value added for us.
Mm-hmm.
So then I've got my last question, which is a bit more of a fun question. Every trade show that we go to, all of these exhibitors are trying to use freebies and giveaways to pull people in. What's the best and worst freebie that you've seen at either this or other shows?
I'll give the unpopular opinion, speaking for myself, not my company. So I am fairly introverted. So a full day of talking to people is exhausting. And I don't want people to come talk to me just because I have a good freebie, not because they actually want to do business. So I think no freebie is the best freebie.
All right, controversial opinion, Brooke. Nice.
Well, I see most of us wear glasses, so I say I'm always looking for lens wipes. That's one that is popular, and I have grandkids, so I'm always looking for things that would resonate with them as well. So those are things that I look at. One that I saw at a trade show recently, it wasn't SOCMA. Last summer, before the season started, I was at a trade show and they were giving out SEC. This is one that Jenny can appreciate, an SEC football calendar with their name and logo on it. So I grabbed that. I grabbed a few of those. And on the worst side, I think pens that don't work is one that's a pet peeve of mine. Or electronics that are way out of date. I mean, I don't need something that plugs into a cigarette lighter anymore. So
Nice.
Awesome. Christian.
Yeah, I think the best thing I saw, which I tried to replicate this in SOCMA last year, it actually ended up not working out because the fine folks at the hotel did not agree with what was considered a free versus sold beverage, but espresso shots, right? So we went to another conference and a company brought one, a little Nespresso machine and some single-use creamers and Biscoff cookies, and they had a line down the hall the entire conference, right? And not that free coffee wasn't available everywhere. I guess people were looking for the stronger stuff, right? So again, assuming you're within the regulations of whatever hotel or association you're participating in, I think that can be quite a ringer. I'll pick on a cent for bad trade show gift items. So I didn't buy these. They weren't a predecessor of some sort, but we bought a lot, right? Maybe more than 1,000 stress balls from China with like our Ascent logo on them, and they don't squeeze, right? They're like rock hard. Right? They're supposed to be stress balls. So
they cause you stress.
Oh yeah, they just cause me stress. Exactly.
those are things that I grab because my grandkids can throw them at each other and do little damage to the house, right? So if they don't squeeze, they could probably hurt each other.
Yeah, I would say the best ones that we've had are ones where people walk by and say, "Oh, I could give that to my kids or my grandkids," or things like that. The worst one that we had, though, in my opinion, is we had these pop sockets for the back of your phone.
Mhm.
And we were like, "Oh, these are great. These are really cool." Turns out people don't want to put another company's logo on the back of their personal cell phone. And we could not give these things away. In fact, I still think we have 1,000 of them. But yeah, thank you for that. And just a little bit of a fun question for the end here. So why don't we go to questions? Jenny, do you want to jump in?
I was gonna say there was some if you're following the chat, and I'm not sure if you guys are, but there was a 2-pound chocolate bar. That was one of those, and the other one was that they had branded socks last year, and people went nuts over those. I know
like
the
those.
SOCMA socks were very popular, and then another one was a pickleball racket set. So anyway, just wanted to jump in and mention those. They were in the chat versus the Q&A, so I wanted to make sure that I shared that out.
I will say,
That's-
if you're one of those companies that's going to give out a universal connector set for various different, you better make sure it works. Because I was in an airport and I had one of these from a show, and I'm like, "Great, thank you." And I plugged, and it just didn't work. And I'm like, "Well, now I'm mad."
You know what? It just made me think we haven't talked about this beforehand, but I wonder if companies are doing more raffles versus freebies. Like I saw the pickleball racket sets. Was that a raffle where people drop off their business card? Or that's kind of interesting for some of the service providers or the, maybe equipment manufacturers that are really trying to get a lot of cards in to make connections. Just an interesting strategy. I don't know if it works or not.
And and guys, speaking of that raffle, I know Jessica and she's on the call too, have been thinking about, on the sponsorship side, as a raffle, sponsoring a raffle at the show and something like that as well. So there's some opportunity there. If anyone's interested in that, we can definitely look at that too, and help drive traffic to your booth.
Excellent. All right. First question I've got here is, can anyone speak to tips on utilizing the exhibitor showcase? Jenny, do you want to take that first one from a SOCMA side?
So the exhibitor showcase is a 15-minute infomercial. So, it's an opportunity, and we do have those before the show begins. So you have an opportunity to get in front of, attendees at the show and share your capabilities. And going back to like who you have at the booth and who you're going to have speaking to people on site, our recommendation is number one, when you have someone doing the exhibitor showcase, have someone who is a good speaker, who has a knowledge and a a really good flow. I've sat in some where they're very engaging and really make you want to call them and find out what's going on. And then at other shows we've been to, we've been at some of those where it's someone that's very technical and dry and so again there's an opportunity to ensure that your slides are sharp and and really educational, and that the person there is someone who as a speaker you want to connect with your audience. So that's important too on the sales side, and being able to engage them and make them want to come and talk to you. So while what you offer and your capabilities are definitely the biggest driver, if you add those types of things to your thought process in the presentation, it can only enhance that at the show and really hopefully increase that engagement and traffic to your booth. So that's what I would recommend from just that perspective at SOCMA.
Excellent. Thank you, Jenny. To our panelists, is there any advice that you can offer on the exhibition or showcases?
Yeah, I think we showcase every year, and I think we get a lot of our unplanned meetings and our booth visits from the showcase. And typically when our showcase wraps up, there's a line of people, waiting to talk to us after that hadn't really known much about us prior to the showcase. So we find it hugely beneficial.
I would agree with you. I think we skipped one year, a couple of years ago, and I think we regretted it. I think, and the thought process was, well, we know everybody that we thought we knew all the important people that we already talked to, and we've been here every year. We don't really need to do that again, and so forth. And we miss opportunities, I believe. And it's the people that are either new to the show or hadn't attended our showcase in the past, or we have new capabilities that we hadn't talked about in the past and people were surprised to hear about. So I think we missed opportunities when we didn't present it at the showcase.
Excellent. All right. Jenny, I think that's all we've got for questions. I'm going to hand it back to you.
Okay, so one thing I can say, just kind of a little update, because there has been a couple of questions. As far as meeting rooms and showcases, we are sold out this year, and we are tracking ahead on, exhibitors, and our attendees are continuing to grow day over day. So that's one reason too. The list of attendees will be coming out soon. But this first week or two in January, it grows exponentially. So again, we usually wait till, we get into the year a bit just so that you have a more robust list to start with, and then it just grows continually, up until showtime. So again, we're looking for a really, really great show this year. And as Brooke said, this whole show process is driven by our trade show committee and our SOCMA team. So we couldn't do it without, their input and feedback. And so we appreciate, Brooke is our chair, and we appreciate, all of that. So I did want to, is there anyone that hasn't put, a question that we can answer? Again, we are tracking along the same, trend as we were last year, and last year's attendees was around 1,250. So as we're tracking right now, we are, there or a little ahead of that. So we're looking for a really good show, this year. So, everything is trending up, all the metrics. So I did want to share a couple of deadlines with you guys. The manufacturers are all, we do put our the capabilities of our manufacturer companies in our show program. So if you're manufacturing and you haven't, submitted your capabilities, Friday is the deadline. So for those of you who haven't, please, make sure that you're doing that and get that into us by Friday. And then also, for those of you who may not have, please sign into the Exhibitor portal and register your team and update your company profile if you haven't done that. Because I know a lot of you have, but again, just a friendly reminder to do that. And then as far as, I know someone asked about our presenters, for the conference. Andrew Bush is going to be our keynote speaker. And he has worked with the federal government. He's not just a economist and futurist, but he actually is going to provide strategy, that you can take away. He's a very well known within our industry. He's worked with Nurion and Baker Hughes and various companies, and he considers himself as a contractor for our show for the day. So it's not just the typical, speaker. So that is going to be our keynote. That was one of the questions there. And then, of course, Brian Kitchen, who's one of our board members, is going to be moderating our buyer Toller panel. And so we're firming up the final speakers on that. So that should be coming out. We're hoping to wrap that up, this next week or so. And then we're going to have a panel that's going to be really focused on the policy and regulatory aspect of business. We had done this at one of our not exhibitor, but our executive dinners. And so we are looking to have, we're looking to have hopefully Robbie and Smear from Thompson Hine to repeat that for that particular panel. So again, that's coming out shortly. We're just wrapping up, final things and getting preparations. We were just on a call with Brian yesterday. So again, just getting back from the holidays, getting everything, just all the I's dotted and T's crossed. So stay tuned. Everything will be coming back out to you guys shortly. So any final thoughts? Well, thank you all. I mean, again, Lloyd, I know this was kind of your brainchild from last year. And so thank you for being a great moderator for the panel today, and Christian and Jim and Brooke. Again, we appreciate that. And two, truly, guys, one thing about SOCMA is talking about the connectivity. Our team, it's almost, we pick up our team and we move them to Nashville. So, we're very good about, making introductions among folks. If there's someone you wanted to meet on site, we always, if you see someone with a SOCMA staff badge, please reach out to us, because that's what we're there for. And we truly do want to make sure that this is a successful event for all of you. And we look forward to seeing y'all in Nashville. Okay.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Thanks,
All right.
Jenny.
Have a great day. All right.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.